Pour yourself a sweet tea, pull up a lawn chair, and turn the page with us. You're listening to Right On Mississippi, a podcast taking you inside the minds of America's most treasured wordsmiths. I'm Ebony Lumumba, and Right On Mississippi is produced in partnership with Mississippi Public Broadcasting for the Mississippi Book Festival, the South's literary lawn party. I have the thrill of being here with Mesha Maren. Greetings.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Thanks for being had here in Mississippi as we talk about literature and all of the fun and romantic and goofy things that surround producing.
Yeah.
Really sound, substantive literature, as you've done with Sugar Run and other things that you've written. So, I'd like to start this off by asking about your connection, if any, to our state, to Mississippi or the South at large. Do you feel a connection with this space? And if so, has that ever found its way into your work?
Yeah. So I definitely do feel a connection to the South in general, and specifically, honestly, Mississippi, mostly through literature, through writing from here. Stories. When I think back to kind of like, people talk about the lineage of their writing, and one of the biggest moments for me was when I found the work of Larry Brown. And a friend who actually drove me down today from Memphis, a writer named Grant Gerald Miller, introduced me to Larry Brown's work. Grant just graduated from the MFA program in Tuscaloosa, and was more well-versed than I was sort of in that vein of Southern writing, and just said kind of offhandedly, I think you might like this guy's work. And there was something in the way that that Larry Brown wrote about living rurally that I hadn't, the way that he wrote about it, the people he wrote about, I hadn't seen represented. And even though I grew up quite a ways from here, I grew up in rural West Virginia, which, technically...
For some, it's the South still, though.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about. Are you Southern? We're happy to adopt you.
Right. I think so, and I think so specifically because I come from Greenbrier County, West Virginia, which is a very, very bottom part of the state. And, I mean, there's lots of different ways that we can define the South. But
I agree. And we should continue to kind of open that definition.
Right. So, sort of... I mean, honestly, to put it in the most crass way, some of the most negative ways of defining the South is thinking about the Confederacy.
100%.
And unfortunately, that was a big part of, like, Greenbrier County during the Civil War, when West Virginia became its own state. They didn't want to leave the Confederacy, where the rest of the state really did. So in those sort of not so awesome ways, it is a part of the South. And then I think that there are more positive ways in which, like for me, a kid coming from rural West Virginia, to feel that affinity with Larry Brown's work, I think that means, and I felt the affinity because it felt like he was writing about people that I grew up around. And so I think that says something that means that you can split hairs, but it means that basically, West Virginia, or at least Southern West Virginia, is.
I like that as a way of defining what's Southern, right? Because this is a
conversation. Who you identify with.
Who you identify with and what you recognize as, your reality.
Right.
As opposed to, like, my family did this, live there, own this, own them.
Right.
And so I am Southern, because I think that's where we get those negative connotations or characteristics.
Yes.
And as a Black Southerner, I am, it's a sticking point for me.
Right.
To say I am Southern, and Southern looks like this as well.
Exactly. And it's not a good idea for us to pretend like that wasn't a part of the South and a part of defining it, but it's also like not...
All of us have the drunk uncle, but he's still your uncle.
Yes. So I think that West Virginia, or at least Southern West Virginia, is at least, you could say culturally more like the South than any other part of the U.S. that I have been to.
Okay.
And so...
Cool. I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
It was like, as a deep Southerner, which is a term I just coined just now for this discussion.
Yes.
When things start to go above Tennessee, it just gets really murky for us. And we're like, oh, you're a Yankee.
Right. No, and...
Do people still use that term? I have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, yes. My mother-in-law uses that term a lot.
And she is denigrating people when she uses
very much. I once accidentally like really offended her by like saying something about her sense of humor and saying like that she interpreted, and she was like, oh, anyways, to me, comparing her to a Yankee, and that was, I mean, we really had to do some
dinner went
some
downhill,
some quick damage repair there after that. So people do still use that, and I do think it does get murky, and there are a lot of ways in which West Virginia became a state because that region wanted to leave the South,
right?
So it is almost a funny thing,
like
to
irony,
ask, right? Where you would the answer would seem like it would almost be like, well, obviously it's not a part of the South. Like it became its own state because it didn't want to be a part of the South. Because it didn't want
to be a part of that.
Right.
You know, what was defining the South at the time.
Yes, and there are ways. I mean, I also read books like set in rural Maine and can feel, you know, maybe there's a ruralness that kind of transcends.
Which I mean, there's this sort of global southernness.
Yes,
I think that exists, and I want to segue here into talking about Sugar Run.
Yeah,
and how I was just talking to another writer, and she said, in essence, it's the specificity that allows for universality in literature.
I would agree. Yes.
And I thought, and then I thought about you and your work, and I thought, you're writing a story that is about love and trauma and struggle and the human spirit connecting with other human spirits and survival, but there's some specificity there that separates it and connects it. So talk to me a little bit about, just very briefly, and then we'll get into other goofy things, I think, but you know, about what you were thinking as you were creating I'm going to call her a heroine.
Yeah.
Or because she has some heroic undertaking.
She makes some bad decisions at certain points.
And heroes have to.
Yeah.
That formula from like classic literature.
It's true.
They have to make mistakes.
Right. I like that you want to call her that. That was very much my relationship to Jodi, was that she is a heroine, and a broken one perhaps, but a heroine. And I think that the book was always very character driven for me. Like it was Jodi's story, and everything else fell into place around it. I mean, it is set in the town that is Jodi's hometown. Really, honestly, is my hometown. I just kind of changed the name so that I didn't feel like I had to be tied.
Other people from your hometown that are in the story.
Yes.
Yep. Now they know who they are.
Yes. No, I mean, I definitely used some. I thought sometimes twice about using certain last names and things, but was like, you know what? There's also certain names that are very specific to certain
the area,
areas.
right? For like just historical correctness.
Yes. So I changed just partially just for fun, and also so that I didn't have to feel 100% tied to the quote unquote truth. I changed the name of the county and the name of the town. But honestly, it's set in the same. And
folks
County,
who know
Alderson,
it will
West
recognize
Virginia.
it.
Exactly.
Nice.
So I wanted to write about that because it's where I grew up, and because I was always interested and fascinated by it. And I was my dad always presented to me as I was growing up the importance of stories and listening to people's stories, and all of my neighbors around me. I grew up around a lot of really strong women. Sadly, there's, I'm sure it's not specific to West Virginia, but there seemed to be a trajectory where there were a lot of women whose husbands had died fairly young. And tragically, the main economy in the tiny corner of the state that I'm from was a rock quarry for the CSX Railroad.
I was about to say, are they like mining?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's basically the equivalent of it. I mean, it was a open face rock quarry.
Okay.
But people died in that line of work.
Yeah.
A lot. And then there were the women who continued on and kept raising the kids. And so the women that I grew up right in my neighborhood were storytellers. I mean, they wouldn't have thought of themselves that way necessarily, but I would go over to their house after school, get out of my mom's hair, and they were telling me these really fascinating stories. And my dad, I want to, just say that I really appreciate that he always made it very obvious to me that I needed to respect that was something that wasn't just a casual like, that's Dulcie, she's just talking, but like, no, this is important, this is your elder and you need to listen to her.
Your dad did that.
My dad did.
I love that. Yeah. I love that because,
and would demonstrate to me like, we're going to go and we're going to sit at her kitchen table and we're going to pay attention to what she's saying.
My gosh.
And I think that that's some of my drive for writing, or at least some of my drive for writing about that part of West Virginia, was hearing these fascinating stories and being like, oh yeah, this is a place of a lot of stories. This place contains many stories, and those stories are beautiful and worthy of listening to.
I love it. Like, this place contains lots of stories. I mean, it's such a beautiful, like, thought, because we're sitting in a library now, and there are all of these stories surrounding us physically, right? Very literally. But I think when we are able to attach stories to a place or a culture, it grounds, roots, and substantiates the existence of those people or that place.
And my dad showed to me that he valued the stories. He wanted to spend his time listening to them, asking questions. And so, of course, as a kid, I just saw that. It was like, obviously, since my father thinks this is an important way to spend your time, it must be. And so I think some of the book came out of that, and some of it came out of just the character of Jody, which I'm not entirely sure where I didn't model her off of a specific person, but she sort of came to me, and then the book was very driven by her and really my sort of fascination with her.
So Jody we had a conversation earlier at the book festival about Eudora Welty and how the characters that she wrote possessed her. Yeah. And they drove the story. So you had that same sort of encounter?
Yes. And I had been writing before.
I love hearing that.
And this was the first time that I felt like that. I mean, I'd written quite a few short stories, and I'd been I'd tried to write a couple of other like longer pieces, but and when I was working on a short story, I would feel like I was there with the character, but I never had a character like Jody. Honestly, there were times when I tried to quit writing the book because it felt like I didn't know how to do it, or I was struggling with it, and I would put it away, and I would feel like the same way that you feel when you have that friend who you've been texting with them or whatever, they're going through a hard time, but you're like, I just can't.
I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say.
I want to like text you like, and it's gonna be okay. Yeah. Like, it's not. You're not okay.
But you kind of like
there are no
just
emojis
don't answer back for a while, and then you're like, oh no, I feel really bad. Like, I really should have shown up for that person. And that's how I would feel for this character, was if I tried to quit writing the book, I would be like,
letting Jody down.
Right. Like a partner or a friend who you're like, it's just really not fair for me to just abandon.
She needs like your action to continue. This is probably the most in-depth discussion that I've had about how characters drive and guide stories. Yeah. And I'm fascinated in the responsibility you're telling me you felt to Jody.
And that's a good word to use. I really did. And it was the first time that I had that kind of experience. And I felt it. And I felt it to the point where when I was writing the novel, I was living in Iowa City. My partner was in grad school there, and I was just waitressing and writing when I wasn't waitressing. And I had this moment where I made basically kind of a deal with Jody in my mind, where I was like, I'm going to put everything I can into this. I'm going to write this novel to the end. I will try to find an agent and try to find a publisher for it. But if that doesn't work, like if I give it my all, truly and totally, and it fails or nothing happens with it, then Jody, you have to let me go. Like,
what did she say?
I'm off the hook. She said, okay.
She didn't mean it, though.
If I
think
truly...
So? Do you think she would have left you alone, right? If
Probably
Sugar Run had not manifested.
But maybe she knew, like, okay, that's like like in my mind it was like, I will give everything I can to this, but then there has to be a cutoff point where you can't keep giving everything forever. So at least it seemed to me like she said, okay.
She told you what you needed to hear to get it done.
Just give it. Give it your all and don't worry too much.
It's kind of like our parents. Like, if you do your best.
Right. And I didn't believe that I could write a book that would actually get published. I mean, I wasn't like, this is going to get published. I just was like, well, I know that I have a pretty good work ethic. I know I can work hard.
Yeah.
I know I can write the rest of the book, and I know I can write query letters and try to find an agent. I don't know if I can get an agent, but I know I can give it my best. And so that was sort of the agreement I felt like I had to make with her, which was like, I will do everything within my own powers. And then after a certain point, if nothing happens with that, then...
And I've got to wonder, like, how many authors that we know that, after they've passed, then we find these files of these books that they
very
wrote.
well could.
I talked to Casey Setman, so she talked about Harper Lee not really being able to put this true crime novel together. Have you read?
No, I read a little article.
Furious Hours,
about
fascinating. But then I wonder, now it makes more sense to me with you sort of giving clarity to this, that there was this pull. And I mean, I can't think of an author that I really follow and love that doesn't have some untold, unfinished manuscript that's just
you've tried
there. I mean, living and dead.
Yeah.
So but it makes more sense. I think, I mean, hopefully folks listening, it makes more sense too, that this is not just, I'm going to sit down and write the great American novel.
Right. No. I mean, I knew that I really cared for Jodi, but I didn't know that if I was capable of writing a publishable novel. I just knew I cared about her and that I would try my very best. But in the back of my mind was kind of like, I may try my very best and it may not, this book may go on the shelf and then there may be another, you know. And the good thing was that then I did find an agent who was very not only supportive of me, but helpful as far as editing. And he kind of helped me take it to the next level. So I didn't do it all entirely on my own. But I did kind of have an awareness of the fact that, like, I cared deeply for Jodi, but I didn't know if anybody else would. Like, I hoped, I thought. But I think and it was like my responsibility to try to bring her out into the world so that other people would have the chance
to care about her. And to get to know her. Wow. And maybe care about other folks in a different way once you get to kind of read into the intricacies of characters' lives.
Yes. Yeah, I think
that's breathtaking. Really, it is.
Thanks. Yeah, I think one of the things...
It's justice work that you're, describing here.
Yeah, it's funny because I've done a lot of social activism and different kinds of work in my life, and I feel like I've always thought of it as very separate from my fiction world. But when you say I'm like, I guess it's not so much. I think I just always thought, well, here's the fiction writer me over here who, sometimes I could even think in my own mind that writing fiction was selfish in a way because it's not immediately helping someone in the same way that, like, volunteering at a domestic violence shelter does, you know? So right? Like, so I kind of kept those separate in my mind. Yeah. But, but it's true that it was sort of like, it did feel like my job to bring Jodi out into the world. And one of the things that a reader said to me that was probably, like, my favorite thing that anybody said to me was that she had never spent any time in her life around someone like Jodi, and that that's what I mean to, like, love her. And I felt like that was interesting to know. It was hard for me to imagine, like, oh, right, I guess this reader had lived a fairly sheltered life to have never spent any time around somebody of a different socioeconomic level. But the fact that somebody could be like, honestly, I've never hung out with somebody like that. I've never had that opportunity. Yeah. And yet I cared for her. I think that's what I mean, right? With all of Jodi's intersections, it's completely possible for us to go through life if we don't identify, with any of her identity intersections, not ever really deeply knowing. I mean, you may know someone who like works in the same hall as you, or you went to college, but you didn't deeply know them. And so I think literature like yours provides this opportunity to take a magnifying glass to a life that seems different from yours, but then it's that specificity that allows for the universal experience. Oh, I can relate to her sadness, to her trauma, to her disappointment, and to her just kind of grasping at straws to survive and make sense of her life after this, 18 or so years that she spends, in a different world, really, which is... Yeah, and I liked hearing somebody say that they were surprised to relate to her, which... I mean, I guess in certain ways, I feel like some of the best thing that books can do is to be like, oh, I related. This was about me. And it was entertainment. Me, the statistics or whatever on this person, I'd be like, I have nothing. I know nothing about that person. So, pivoting a little bit, what were you doing as Jodi was, like, pestering you to write her story? Were you reading other things? Were you watching series? How, and not necessarily even to prepare to write Jodi, but just... Yeah. I was living, during the bulk of the time that I was writing the book, I was living in Iowa City and working as a waitress in a little restaurant there, and I would do the breakfast shifts so that I could get that work out of the way, and then go to the public library and write afterwards. And I some of the things that I remember reading at the time, even though I wasn't totally maybe aware of them affecting me, but I read Anne Carson's autobiography of Red, which on its surface is like a drastically different book than Sugar Run, but it's also like a queer coming of age story, and the pain of getting to know your own body and your own desires.
Right.
And I also remember one day so the public library there had study rooms that you could check out with your library card, and there were these like little
cubes.
Yeah. And I liked to write there because there were no distractions. But sometimes when I would get up and go to the bathroom, I passed the like reshelving carts. And one day there was a book of these photographs by this guy, Gregory Crewdson.
Yeah.
And I saw it and I picked it up and took it back to my little cubicle with me. And those photos affected me in a way. I think I wasn't because it wasn't words, because it was photos, I wasn't as worried about being overly influenced.
Yeah.
But
because whatever you wrote about them, that was still your writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it felt like it really struck me because when I got up and went to the bathroom, I was very in my world of the book. And when I was coming back, I glanced over and saw this, and it looked like an image from my book.
Yeah.
And I think what I really liked about those photos, I mean, if people are familiar with Gregory Crewdson, they might be able to already see this, but for people who aren't, he photographs very working class, very mundane situations very beautifully, like they're like very
like striking,
beautifully lit, beautiful, but they're
celebrating this sort of practical life that folks are living, and there's beauty in that.
And there's nothing in the photo, it's happening in the photo or about the setup of the photo that is like particularly like, I'm going to,
it's not an editorial.
Right. It'll be a picture of a house with like one person in the driveway, but it's beautifully lit, beautifully photographed. And somehow the way he sets it up, it really draws you into the characters in it. Anyways, so I spent a lot of time with that book.
I think that's the first time that I've spoken to a writer who talked about photography. And I'm thinking, if we're in Mississippi, we're talking about writing, I'm thinking Welty.
Yeah.
And her own photography and how it informed
Absolutely.
a lot of what she wrote. So it's really refreshing to hear you kind of reference that, these stills as a motivation for creating like a world around them.
Yeah. And I think they were so interesting and beautiful. It made me be like, I want to be able to do that with words. Yeah. And I want people to be able to see that while this, dive bar that I'm writing about is sad and depressing and possibly ugly in some ways, it's also beautiful. And that, it felt like a challenge for me to rise to. Like, let me make it show you the beauty in it in some way. Yeah. Not to gloss over everything else, but...
So that kind of segues into what I've been thinking as we've been talking, and Sugar Run and its characters, Jody included, but the other sort of auxiliary characters, very much, I think, represents a lot of what's missing in literature, popular literature, right? So is that intentional? I mean, are you writing what you miss seeing?
Right. I think it's probably intentional in a unintentional way. I mean, I think so. You're not the first person to ask me that, and I think it makes total sense for people to ask me that because there are so many aspects of the novel that are like quote unquote political in certain ways. Queer characters, the devastation of the fracking happening in West Virginia, the effects of poverty, incarceration, like a lot of them. But the funny thing about the true answer to that is that those things sort of accumulated around Jody as I was writing her. And so I didn't set out to write a character who was queer. I realized as I was writing Jody that she fell in love with a woman and then she fell in love with another woman. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is a part of this person's life. But I didn't conceive of that from the outset.
Is there any...
No,
So was there any sort of... Were you apprehensive about writing a female queer character who had been incarcerated and then coming out, falling in love with women, and there being this sort of stereotype, you get incarcerated and then you develop this affinity for a same-sex romance?
Yes. There were several aspects of Jody that I was sort of nervous about because I care deeply for her, and I created her out of a deep interest in her and compassion for her, but I was aware that there were things that could look stereotypical or something, so in a way I felt with that particular aspect of it, I was like, well, the way that I conceived of the way Jodi told her story to me was she fell in love with Paula before she went to prison.
Okay.
So that was a part of her identity. I don't think Jodi would call herself queer. I think I call her queer, but I think she would probably maybe say she's a lesbian.
May not be her like lexicon, right?
Right. Like she's not part of the world that
like a movement for her,
right? That reclaims that word, but. I think she would openly, admittedly say that the important relationships in her life have all been with women. And so part of that came before prison. But then, there were also aspects of she's not a like upstanding citizen. I mean, she does a lot of drugs and she's violent in certain ways. And she has a great heart, but she, so I did wonder honestly how she would be received. And if people would focus sort of more on those
on her
parts.
Sort of demons, if you
will. Which it's not like I want people to ignore those aspects.
Not
of
let
her.
that be the center of her character.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
which is hard. I mean, we do that to like living, breathing people.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted her to be like a living, breathing person, where she's got a great big heart, but that does not stop her from making terrible decisions. So I'm pleased to say that I think for the most part, almost everybody that I've talked to has fallen in love with Jodi in some way,
and some
either
human
despite or maybe because of the way she lives her life. But I think that
probably allowing them to forgive themselves a little bit for whatever. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I think the main thing about Jodi is we all make mistakes, not all the same mistakes that she did, but we all make mistakes or bad decisions. But sometimes the way that our lives are set up, we're able to either cover them up or bounce back from them.
Cover them up. Whoa.
I mean, I know that if you, we
like
want to talk about privilege.
You're right about it, yeah.
It's people with more money. It's not that people with more money don't make any mistakes or bad decisions. They can just cover it up.
A higher thread count on the blankets they can throw over.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. Exactly. And
wow, that's
you
great.
can either make it disappear or change the narrative around it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have that luxury.
Right.
So it's all out there in the open.
There. Wow. It reminds me very much, honestly, of the narrative of Mississippi, right? And it's all out there.
The good, the bad, the ugly, it's...
Yep.
Right.
There's no, hidden history.
It's true, which can be some maybe more possibilities for reckoning when everything is out there.
I agree, yeah. All out on the table.
It's painful, too. And
traumatic.
Messy.
Yeah, it's a mess. A hot mess, if you will.
Yeah.
It's August here. So.
Yeah, so we can say that,
Yeah. Well, listen, you're not a Mississippian, but I dub you.
Thank you.
Honorary.
You
had fried chicken for lunch. So
I did.
I think
that
by the powers vested in me.
If we're thinking about it in terms of literary heritage, I think Mississippi would be where I would if I was going to adopt a southern state. I think,
They like us. She likes us. She really likes us.
When I was here, so I did a reading at Lemuria back in January, I think. And my publisher flew me in to Jackson, and then I had a reading in Greenwood and in Oxford and in New Orleans. So they got me a rental car, which I was really happy about because then
it's a lovely drive. 55 going New Orleans and then going north to Oxford.
I went up through to Greenwood and then and that was my favorite. The trees, y'all have really
amazing
really
foliage.
Good trees.
We have. It's the worst day for allergies, but it looks
I don't have allergies, so and rivers and the names of your rivers.
Oh, all of the indigenous American names.
Beautiful country and beautiful history, even though there's a lot of pain in it too. But
we have some redeeming qualities, that's for sure. And we thank you for being open to our redemption.
Oh, yeah.
And also, for putting your home on the map in a way that I think is equitable and kind and thoughtful and complicated.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Mesha, right on. Right on West Virginia.
Yeah.
Right on Mississippi. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Right on Mississippi is produced in partnership with Mississippi Public Broadcasting for the Mississippi Book Festival, the South's literary lawn party.